World champion of StarCraft 2 at the moment has been scuppered at the very end by many a TVT, and now we see him in the third of the qualification matches to see if he can move through into Gamers 8. We're at Gamers Without Borders. Joining me to talk about our TVT that is coming up, we have Cats and Artie McTosis to talk about this one. Boys, we're going to get straight into the conversation here. Dan, looking at this, Oliveira, the world champion, going up against SpeCial, who seems on quite a run. It's really exciting to see how SpeCial's playing at the moment. What are you thinking, Dan?
You know, I am a Oliveira fan. I think that, you know, obviously at Katowice it was amazing and everything. He is underperforming a little bit here as compared to how a world champion should be performing. That's not to say he's playing like terribly or anything. Clem just kind of got the upper hand against him in a few of those early games. And as soon as he didn't, you know, Oliveira was able to take a map there. But I think SpeCial is actually playing really fantastically, to be completely honest. Like, even he should have beaten a laser. He absolutely smashed Estrella, who is not a bad player. He had a bad weekend, sure, but he is not at all a bad player. So I am leaning towards SpeCial here. I think he's in very good shape right now.
Cats, your thoughts on the matchup?
Yeah, I mean, he has been scuppered so far, James. I googled that word in between.
No problem, no problem.
Indeed.
Yeah.
But Oliveira, I mean, he has looked really good in TVT, like before he lost to Clem, and I guess he lost to Hero Marie before then. But these are excellent players. SpeCial, he is also a little bit of a specialist in the matchup, and he has been looking really great. I don't know, I'm like kind of torn, right? It's like, how do you predict against the world champion, like to not qualify to this event? Because it's everything on the line. So just because of the pressure, I think I'm going to side slightly with Oliveira.
Yeah, the competition is fierce. And unfortunately, as you say, for Oliveira, he's really he's gotten the short end of the stick when it comes to these TVTs. The Hero Marine 3-0, then going up against another strong Terran, Dan. So I don't know. I think Oliveira is going to have to bring out some of that magic again that we saw in Katowice. He did beat Maru in a final, for Christ's sake.
No, I know. Well, he was in the right position at every moment of those games. Like, he was really feeling the flow of StarCraft at that point. Whereas
for sure.
I think that what we're seeing here is actually probably closer to his normal, maybe slightly below, whereas the run at Katowice was quite above what we would normally see, right? Everyone that plays StarCraft plays within a given range, and Oliveira has shown that his range might be the biggest out of everybody's.
For sure. Yeah. All right. Well, guys, we're not wasting any time here. We are getting into this best of 5, and I hand you over to the commentators. Illustrious TVT caster Rotterdam is alongside sometimes Terran player ZG.
That's true. 1/3 of the time, just about. Yeah, welcome guys to an amazing TVT. I am excited for this one, but it really, to me, kind of depends on Oliveira's form, whether this is going to be an action-packed, back-and-forth TVT, like I'm sure most of us are hoping. And of course, I got Roddy with me. I planned it this way, actually. I calculated it so he'd be sure to cast a TVT with me. How you doing?
I mean, it's a big one, Zombie Grub, so you can't be hating on this TVT, right? It's the world champ with his tournament live on the line. This really is kind of the biggest series I feel like he has played ever since that magical run over in Poland. Of course, the WTL playoffs were important, but it'd be so crazy to imagine a big, massive StarCraft tournament like this without the current reigning, defending world champion. So definitely a big moment for him. And at that point, my TVT heart starts beating a little faster.
I actually love the matchup. Every time there's like a TVT and I'm like, oh, I could take it. But then, you know, I want to make sure that I also get something else because you guys think that it's a bad matchup. No, we have a little bit of chit chat, of course. So I'm just spinning narratives. As there's a pause, apparently. I don't know why I didn't catch why that was, but hopefully everything gets fixed.
Yeah, I don't think anybody thinks that TVT is a bad matchup because we've all seen the banger TVTs where, you know, if it's 4 or 5 bays and it's non-stop action and there are 2 or 3 fights happening at the same time. I feel like everyone loves those games. It's just the TVTs where it's like, okay, you go Reaper, I go Reaper, Heli, and we don't do anything. And then 8 minutes in, the first Raven Viking fight, and that's GG. It's like, oh man, like those are not the favorite. But let's go ahead and see if we are good to go for real this time around. In the bottom right side, representing DKZ Gaming, this is the world champion of StarCraft 2, Oliveira.
In the top left for Psystorm Gaming, he is the Blue Terran SpeCial.
I still have to get used to the new name of Dragon Phoenix Gaming for a little bit. It's gonna take me a while.
DKZ is pretty cool, though. I mean, a big fan of the Z letter, the Z letter. It's a decent logo, too. I like it. Lightning bolt, dragon around it.
I'm not hating on it. I love saying Dragon Phoenix Gaming, and they took it away from me.
Oh, yeah. I see. It's a fun name to say. One thing I wanted to point out while we did catch a glimpse. So apparently it was hotkeys and they changed region, and that reminded me, this is probably the best opportunity for Oliveira to show his best form in terms of the time, because the rest of the tournament flew by so fast. It's not as late as it could be over in just kind of general East Asia. And then the server, right, would be on Korea, I assume, because SpeCial is in Korea. So considering that, for me at the very least, and I think most people were looking at Oliveira and kind of being like, okay, where are you at really? Like, what's going on here? I would say that he now gets maybe his best chance to perform, but obviously that also means SpeCial gets a best chance to perform as well.
Yep, but I still think that Oliveira is going to be very happy with that, especially thinking back of the amazing TVTs he played with no ping. This really is a big moment for him. This really is his biggest opportunity and the best opportunity. And I was kind of wondering, like right before the action truly kicks in, who are you leading towards? Because we heard the boys at the desk a little bit. I want to say Oliveira personally, but I am not 100% convinced. Not as convinced as I should be.
Oh, I'm actually just totally convinced that SpeCial is going to win 3-1.
Ooh. Why is that, Zombie Group?
Well, to be honest, Oliveira just really hasn't impressed me. It's not like anything truly terrible, but if I were to be as harsh as I possibly can as a commentator, I would say his engagements are fairly bad for the pro gamer standard. Is the most polite way I guess I can say that. Some of them are just honestly very questionable. So, and SpeCial to me has always been such a great TVTer. He really has like a big brain for this stuff. And as long as his mechanics are fine, which 90% of the time this tournament they have been, he delivers. So yeah, I'm very SpeCial favored.
I like that you mentioned the big brain of SpeCial. As much as that is one of his strengths, sometimes I also feel it turns into a bit of a weakness where his brain is becoming too big for his own good, right? We're overcomplicating things a little bit or trying to get too fancy rather than just going for the kill.
Yes, I do absolutely agree with that. I'm thinking back to some season finals, actually, where the strategy was amazing, but not so much in the execution. And that execution from Oliveira, basically the exact opposite of what Clem did to him on the exact same map in the exact same positions, where Clem dominated, and Oliveira just straight up did not.
So that Widowmine shot was obviously absolutely perfect. Nice target fire there by SpeCial. We could really see him switch targets. But I gotta say, Oliveira handled that very nicely. With a bunch of low HP units, he actually turned it into a somewhat favorable trade. As he now gets another somewhat favorable trade. Wants to get the Widowmine, gets the Widowmine. 2 extra Reapers show up. That's the micro that got us so excited over in Poland. This is already looking pretty good from Oliveira. A whole lot better than some of the other TVTs we saw. This is amazing.
Yeah, no, it actually turned super amazing. The Marines a little stacked up. They got shot too many times. They weren't really in a concave as much as you would like. And then I guess because he spent more time on that factory, the Cyclone is even later to help out. And the Banshee just had to be revealed to help, which I'm sure SpeCial was also hoping to avoid. So that did actually turn around despite the questionable first second.
Yeah, no, the Widowmine shot could not have been any better. Obviously, it gets the kill, but it did a whole lot of splash damage. But I love how Oliveira pulled back to the high ground, immediately split his units perfectly. And after that, the target fire, I think, was absolutely perfect. Don't think he really could have done anything better than he ended up doing. And on top of that, even if the Reapers ended up falling after killing these SCVs, you now know about the fact that there is a Banshee, right? So this Banshee, theoretically, shouldn't deal a whole lot of damage. However, if our units are chilling in the bottom left side of the map and the Banshee's arriving in our main base, it could still deal some damage.
Positioning still ends up being the most important part. It's why Poros players go Phoenix and then still die to Widowmine drops, you know? They're out of position, I'll tell you. So Cyclone is going to come by.
That has never happened to me,
sure.
Zombie Drop. Never. Ever. Actually, just the other day.
Yeah, I would have guessed. I could just literally go to yesterday's VOD.
All right, I'm guilty.
Yeah, and unfortunately for SpeCial, even though he did manage to find things slightly out of position, Oliveira's quick reaction with the mass repair ensured that not even one, or ideally two SCVs went down. Really, the Banshee would have loved to have gotten 4 and then lived. So it's like Oliveira has leveled up, perhaps, to the server and the situation. He is now playing as smartly and just like concretely. The agility being displayed here is now very impressive, so I am glad to see Oliveira showing up.
We've got a 16 army supply lead, gets the lock on the Raven too. That's pretty big, because now that one Raven of SpeCial is already going to take a decent amount of damage. We could drop some other turrets here on the side of Oliveira. That is exactly what he's going to do, and SpeCial might be able to clean this up, but it's going to be such a painful cleanup if he can even clean it up in the first place.
The tank repair! Oh my god! Well, that'll save his life, but yes, it's not going to be a very good life to live afterwards. SpeCial is in a lot of trouble, down 10 workers. I mean, I guess he does have some upgrades going along for him, but he's going to be denied his third base for an extended period of time, and Oliveira is now getting his. So SpeCial, it's going to be a comeback after this, but he is going to clean things up actually quite nicely. Good interference matrix, but the Vikings land, and there's just not quite enough fodder. Okay, gets the second tank too.
I was very worried that he would lose high ground vision for a second. That would have been painful. I mean, it's still not quite cleaned up, right? Like, his orbital is still getting attacked, and unfortunately, we are having our second pause of the game. Obviously, an awful moment to have a pause. Okay, it seems like we're already good to go, so I don't think we even need to switch back to us. Virtual keyboard open. What does that even do?
It lets you actually, like, if you don't have your keyboard, you can use the mouse to type.
Sounds like something Terran players could use to 3-rex.
What? I guess so. You don't need a whole lot of APM, I guess. That aside, because that was kind of startling. I've never accidentally opened virtual keyboard. SpeCial just handled that really well. So kind of, kind of marred because of that pause. So that was a nice handling. SpeCial actually keeps his command center on the low ground, something I was not expecting.
Yeah, memes aside, as bad as that all started, I really think this was about the best possible defense. After the initial lock-on of the Cyclone, all the other turrets going down, the fact that SpeCial lost only, and we say only in this case, 11 SCVs, yeah, impressive, because that really could have been game over. I feel like if he handled it just a little bit worse, if that tank that you got hyped up over would have died, yeah, probably just curtains. Game 1 goes to Oliveira, and we'd be loading into game 2 right now. Instead, SpeCial still has a more than a shot. May not be looking fantastic for him, but he does have a little lead in the upgrades. He has no Vikings, but what he does have are medevacs, and maybe he can find Oliveira out of position. I'm not sure about this attack, though.
He's got combat shields, I think, is why he was confident trying to push into that. But yeah, it was a little too far away. SpeCial still had sights on what was going, or Oliveira, sorry, had sight on what was going down. So it's not like his tanks were missing out on that extra range. So I definitely saw what SpeCial was thinking with that. But similar to, I guess, some of Oliveira's engagements, it's like you see the logic, but there is a few more units. It was just a few too many steps for the Marines, and yeah, it looks a little bit faulty, so SpeCial has to run away.
And with the units that we're working with, you're always dreaming that maybe SpeCial can find some value out of the fact that he had the more mobile army, right? He had the medevacs, and maybe he can boost and catch the Vikings out of position and get into the natural, into the main base. But I guess the Sensor Tower really just denied him from that option, right? Like, once you're there, it's like, well, I guess I gotta go for it now, because if I start picking up at this point, it is not gonna come as a very big surprise. So that attack didn't quite work out, but SpeCial during all of this has taken a minor SCV lead, and that really is very impressive considering the fact how these first 10 minutes have played out.
Yeah, SpeCial is, and he's getting kind of ahead in some of the background aspects, you know what I mean? Like the engagements, the amount of units, it's always a little bit questionable, a little bit scary as he loses SCVs, but then we do have those upgrades on the way, or managed to slip a 4th CC on location, just kind of, I mean, it's a little bit of a gamble, especially because all of his aggression has just been reset, so it's not like he has that, you know, kind of best defense, good offense situation going on. It is a bit of a gamble, but it might just pay off, as Oliveira is sending a pack of Marines over there, but no medevac, so I doubt that's actually committed. Yeah, 4th CC will probably finish and turn into a planetary.
Whenever I see these Marine move outs without any medevacs, I always think of the Chinese Terran XY, because he was the one doing that a long time ago. But he does it a bit later, right? When it's like 4 or 5 bases truly set up, and it's all about tanks and Vikings and the transition into the ultra late game. This would have been way too early to randomly throw away 20 Marines. So I'm glad to see that Oliveira sent them back. Those medevacs are very far forward, SpeCial. Oliveira realized that, goes for the forward stim immediately, guns one down, and now holds his line, convinced that he has enough Marines, and that was just a great little skirmish for Oliveira.
It was a little skirmish, though, so it's not going to really snowball into anything. What might snowball is SpeCial totally just missing out on his +2 armor. So probably barely didn't have enough resources. Pretty common, and he hasn't noticed either. Okay, this is the pause city, man. What the heck? Oh, no! Not a player.
That's a bigger problem, right? Referee A, we can go without him for a game, but Oliveira is one that we are absolutely going to need. It's unfortunate. 3rd interruption so far in this very important best of 5. Obviously very frustrating for the players as well, for both Oliveira and SpeCial, because you're trying to build up that rhythm, you're trying to lock yourself in and truly get into the zone, and this kind of just takes you out of it over and over again.
Yeah. Of course, SpeCial also probably a little bothered, but obviously Oliveira, now he got his stress. Now he's like, oh, what if this keeps on happening? What if I actually disconnect for an extended period of time? Then what are the referees going to roll on? I mean, those thoughts running rampant through his head, no doubt, right now. And completely reset on any momentum and any immediate idea that he had. If he was thinking, oh, send my Marines over there and then get my command center there, take 5 minutes, suddenly you're just like, where was I again? It's very odd.
Yeah, no, this is just, it's not stuff that anybody practices. It's not something you want to practice. It's just annoying. It's annoying for everyone, but especially for these players in this very important best of 5. Now, there are 2 options, obviously. One, he's still in the game, and then we can just continue the game in the near future. Or he actually disconnects, and thank God it is the year 2023, and we can obviously resume the game from replay. But yeah, we do need him to have internet for that, so it's also important that the internet comes back. Let's hope it's the first option, but since it's taking a little while, Zombie grew up, I'm afraid we're going to have to rehost this one.
Yeah, we're also going to go ahead and just send it to a nice little video while we get this reset up. So we'll see you guys in a minute.
Get millionaires right away.
If it doubles every single time, I think I could get much more than 1 million. Shouldn't be too hard, since it's exponential.
저는 이제 그 견제 유닛이 좀 없었어요. 막 한 방에 터지고 견제 유닛이 많이 없었으면 좋겠어요.
Well, if there was a new StarCraft, I would love to see just big changes. So general design changes, maybe a 4th race would be amazing. Just generally new units, new upgrades, just a fresh feeling for the game in general, while also keeping all of its strengths, keeping a fine balance there to make it fun for everybody. I think that's what I would like to see.
If you're new and you play 0 player, like if you cannot control your resources, like just make hedge as possible you can, and don't forget about inject and just make units.
Use camera hotkeys, very important.
고석현 선수랑 스타리그를 했었는데 그때 3대 0으로인가 졌었어요. 그때가 가장 좀 많이 부끄러웠던 것 같아요.
I don't know. I lost to people I really shouldn't lose to, even while playing with one hand. So that happened quite a few times, more times than I would like to actually say. But yeah, it did happen. Everyone has embarrassing moments in their careers.
Coming back to us. I'm not sure if things are actually getting fixed or what. So, and unfortunately, that was the first game, so there's only so much to talk about. Completely even if you guys are just joining, I suppose, except for the upgrade.
Well, one thing that we could talk about is the same thing that the guys in the video were talking about, Zombie Grub. And there's one thing, by the way, that I wanted to mention earlier when we had Cyril talking about his most embarrassing moment. He said he never had one. And I don't know about you, but I was immediately thinking of the Widow Mines on the Romanticide versus Beyond. Like, that was pretty funny.
Oh, I actually wasn't thinking about that. When I was thinking about Cyril's kind of embarrassing moments, and I think he has just a very different threshold for embarrassing. I honestly was thinking about Katowice. Like,
the most recent one?
Yeah, the early tap out, you know, like I don't think he's embarrassed because he still is like, you know, very logical about it. But I would have been like, maybe you're supposed to stick in for a little while longer.
I mean, obviously, the game that I'm thinking about, West Beyond, was online, and there was obviously some ping to worry about, but it was pretty surreal to see Cyril try to get a win of mine like 3-4 times and just not getting it, and more mutas started dying. I thought that was a pretty funny moment. And I also always love it when everyone talks about camera hotkeys, and they're like, that's really important, number one thing. And I'm like, well, 13 years in Zombie grew up, and I still don't use camera hotkeys.
Wait, really?
Yeah, I play without camera hotkeys.
I feel like I'm gonna have known this and I just forgot. I just pushed it out of my brain. Oh my gosh. Is that as bad as Lambo playing with the Razer Naga? I think on that one.
Well, the thing is, I feel like there are clever ways around camera hotkeys, right? Like you can basically get almost the same value out of camera hotkeys, but then not have camera hotkeys. Like you group a unit, and if you then double click on that unit, you jump to it. Or if you know where your gateways is, right? Then you can double click on your gateway and then you jump to your gateway. But anyway, none of that is important. What is way more important is game one between SpeCial and Oliveira. The score is 0-0, by the way. This is still the first game, as Oliveira is apparently just absolutely sending it, and he definitely has a whole lot here. Zombie Grub, I wasn't ready, and I don't know if SpeCial was ready.
No, he wasn't. Notably, his Marines were out of position, so Oliveira choosing the right time to strike. Those Marines, like 1 second faster, literally, and that is a different result. A couple of those tanks that got bopped really as the fight was just beginning. Get one or more, you know, shots, 1 or 2, and that would just already be such a difference. But SpeCial, a little late to the party, a little late to protecting his tanks, and that is going to spell disaster. SpeCial gonna have to tap out, GG, and that's gonna feel really painful because honestly, that would be something that I would attribute to the dropout.
Yeah. Yeah, that's painful in many moments, right? Especially because he was already in so much trouble in this game, and then he kind of clawed his way back into it, and it actually started to look somewhat promising at one point. Yeah, then you have the second pause with the virtual keyboard. That was obviously on his side. And now the third pause, a much longer one, as we're going to take a look at some of the highlights of Game 1, brought to you by Aramco. I did really like the crisis management here, Oliveira, because he absolutely got max value out of every low HP unit.
Yeah, the split on the Reapers, just a segment before, was actually really cool. You know, made sure to concave them, but then he noticed that SpeCial was trying to get a lineup with the Hellions, so he pulled one back again. I mean, and this is just so much more like what we would expect from Oliveira, not just for Katowice run, but beforehand. And it might just really have to do with the server. Something that I think there was still enough evidence of, like, you know, non-micro based decisions to say that Oliveira was playing a little off, but now we get the micro, we get the game sense, we get the appropriate reads on the engagements, and I guess I gotta chalk it up to him just feeling generally better. So this is the exciting Oliveira, who I really think could even be, you know, I'm flip-flopping basically.
The favorite?
This is Oliveira that would be the favorite, exactly, yes.
I don't know if I'm willing to go that far, but I'd love to be wrong, because Katowice truly was absolutely magical. But I feel like entering this tournament, if he does close out this best of 5 in a successful manner, I think we can call him a dangerous outsider, but I wouldn't necessarily even put him in the top 3 heading into the big offline event. But we're getting way ahead of ourselves.
I didn't mean the favorite for the event, I meant the favorite in the series.
Oh, okay. Well, some people think he's the favorite for the big one as well. So.
No, I'm sorry to say I don't quite think that, but yeah, you know, he plays super well. I guess I feel like we said, you know, yesterday, everyone has a chance to actually win the tournament who's making it through. And you pointed out correctly, maybe it'd be a little more surprising for some people than other. But yeah, there's a chance. I just meant favorite perhaps in this series. We'll see if SpeCial can strike back. Hopefully all the pauses and whatnot are done with. In the bottom right of NeoHumanity, now up 1, it is Oliveira.
And in the top left side, we're looking at the main base of the man who has absolutely entertained us over these 2 weekends. He's had a lot of great series. Can he make a comeback in this best of 5? Representing Storm Gaming, this is SpeCial.
NeoHumanity definitely seems like a map in which SpeCial would try to do something clever, honestly. Last game was rather basic, and I don't think he was really intending on doing anything super crazy, even though he was a little disadvantaged. And you kind of have to play standard perhaps after that. I guess there's arguments either way. NeoHumanity, if nothing goes wrong in the early game, I could absolutely see SpeCial bringing out some of his like mech tactics, or kind of fake mech, or what else does he do on a map like this? Yeah, I think actually just I'm referring to the fake mech that he would bring out. Because SpeCial is the type to throw out mech every once in a while, so you have to take that seriously.
It also feels like a pretty decent map for a mech, right? With 2 sensor towers, I feel like you can basically cover 5 bases. And then you've got that rich Vespian Geyser base in the center that I feel like if you have the 3 base setup with the triangle, it's pretty easy and doable to secure that one too. But I don't know, maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves. Maybe it will just be good old bio. But I wouldn't hate seeing it if there is one map where I would say like, yeah, I'd like to see someone play mech. I do think it is this one.
Yeah, so it could be fake, could be real. Either one, actually. SpeCial doing some heavier Cyclone openings as well. He just have a lot of really great strategies. And then he could also just resort to some of the standard bio play, and I think he'd do wonderfully with that. But Oliveira really showcasing what we love him for. Again, even before Katowice, that just very clean micro and clean decision making. Just everything was so clean. It's like he I don't know. He just shaped up, or as I said before, might just be the situation. And hopefully, with all the pauses over as well, we can also see SpeCial kind of clean things up and actually go back and forth.
Yep. I love this graphic, by the way. Look at that. The factory is lining up even. Oh my goodness. Absolutely perfect. Never seen that. I think they've been working on that. That's why what Mapu and Njal have been sweating for. They're like, all right, keep an eye on the factory location. Eventually, we can perfectly line them up. And they did.
Yes, they did. Oh, you have a slight difference of the reactors, right? So Reaper's coming out from Oliveira once again. He found success with it last game, and that was on a ramp. This has no ramp. Big differences already. And the way that played out, I could definitely see Oliveira getting the similar type of success. SpeCial once again going into the Woodham mine and try and get that best target fire possible, and then maybe he can fix some of his own micro that happened. There was so much micro and counter microing that was happening for that first phase that it can go either way, I guess.
Yeah, if it would play out in the exact same way, that would definitely be terrifying for SpeCial, because you're not going to get Widow Mine hits like that over and over again, where they kill and splash over 3 or 4 units. But it does seem that Oliveira is going back into Marines a little bit quicker than I think he was in the previous game, right?
Yes, yeah, no 5 Reaper, 3 Alien. So you could still be aggressive, but if you are doing this just to be defensive, then it's kind of fair enough. Eventually the Hellions go forward, the Reapers try and jump on the main base, and some damage is done. But, SpeCial with the Woodham Mine is definitely posturing in a more defensive position. But apparently both of them thinking just, I'm going to live to 2 bases, and then we'll see what happens.
Obviously, last game, Oliveira went into Vikings a whole lot quicker and with more emphasis than SpeCial did. SpeCial tried to kind of get out a couple of medevacs early on, but that could have a lot to do with how that initial Viking, or more like the Viking Raven tank push played out. That maybe SpeCial felt like, all right, if I lose 11 SCVs and all that mining time, it almost makes no sense for me trying to play the Viking game.
Well, the choice of Vikings versus, faster medevacs, or even, more Ravens than just 1 or 2, actually going all the way up to 3, it all influences the way that the game will play out. And Oliveira said it before, but if you didn't hear, I do think of him as more of a medevac player if I were to choose some Terran who's more likely to throw out the faster 2 medevacs. But nope. Hasn't done it so far, and it's just adding on the second Raven. Very similar. The third CC's coming down. Oliveira and SpeCial both a little supply blocked at 62. Just minor notes so far.
I definitely think you make a good point there, because in the past, even way before that Magical Katowice run, we were often talking about how crazy aggressive time is and how fun he is to watch back then. And I still remember the one DreamHack event we had where we were in the studio for Sweden, and we were all getting very hyped up for Bunny versus Time back then, now Oliveira obviously, because we were like, all right, we can finally see who is the craziest Terran, who is going to attack between the 2 guys that always attack. And it actually turned out it was Oliveira, and Bunny was very defensive in that TVT. It did go well for the Korean Terran, as that Raven took a lot of damage but will not fall.
Yeah, a little, I feel like a straight up mistake. SpeCial saw the Cyclone waiting and still entered in, but, only if Oliveira wasn't paying attention would it have perhaps not gotten the lock on. And then he didn't have his own Cyclone to try and capitalize on a chase. It just a little bit late to everything, a little bit late to noticing, a little bit late to bring in his possible Cyclone punish. And we do have mech coming out from SpeCial. Nice. Cool.
Yep, that is a very quick additional factory. There goes one more. So SpeCial is indeed going to go for a mech. Seems like he's also willing to sacrifice a Raven. Now the big question is, how many SCVs will this Raven get done? Love the positioning of that first one, because you won't be able to only shoot at the SCVs in the middle line and the gas, but there are also a couple of SCVs that are building the barracks there, and somehow it didn't actually kill that SCV, which I find fascinating, because it had plenty of time to kill that SCV that was building the barracks.
Yeah, it did. Well, Oliveira is going to go for a push out. He does not know as of yet the SpeCial's going into mech. SpeCial just scanned, Oliveira, of course, and got in there and scouted as well. So I think he also has an idea as to how many Vikings there are. And that is important, right? That's going to mean that, Oliveira's not going to be zooming around with medevacs. He's going to be trying to stay in one place and take an engagement. SpeCial went up to 3 Ravens, so he's going to be looking for more of that burst, trying to capitalize on it, but he needs to scout exactly where it's coming from. There it is.
Is it too late, though? Okay, he's going to send units over, but a couple of the tanks are already awfully close to that orbital, and this is going to be annoying for SpeCial. I don't think he's in any danger of losing it, and he decides to evacuate it immediately towards the rich Vespian Geyser base. I kind of like that. If you talk about being decisive, I don't think you can be ever any more decisive than that, but Oliveira feels there is an opening, and he is sending it. He drops the matrices, gets his own auto turrets down as well, and I want to say it looks good for Oliveira, but he does need to get the kill on these tanks.
That was really nice focus fire there, actually. He made sure to focus fire the tank that wasn't matrixed on the backside, figuring he'd still have time to kill the ones that were. So that was nicely done. SpeCial trying to get the forward place position is just, in the same danger as the other one. So SpeCial, that is a harsh break too for particularly a mech player, and he lost all of his Ravens, which just didn't get to jump on his Oliveira's army as much as they wanted to, and it feels like this is going to snowball in Oliveira's favor.
Yeah, this is a problem, as you said. You landed there, but yeah, the tanks are still kind of in range because Oliveira was very quick to reposition a couple of tanks. So SpeCial knows that he just needs to clean this up ASAP. You can see Oliveira shift clicking on the tanks once more, and Oliveira gets the first kill, but will not get the kill on that one. A couple of misrelic SCVs though will get picked off by these bio units that have shown up, and a low HP tanks, as the picture-in-picture showed us that tank actually drove into the leftover Widowmine from the early game.
Well, that's something then. SpeCial needs this third. This is why there really is no just option of saying, well, I'll hold off for a little while longer and then maybe do like a counter drop, for instance, force a little bit of a base trade like we've been seeing so commonly in this tournament. That's not an option for him. He needs those 6 gases, and he can't counterattack with slow mech units. So thankfully, the air control that he had gotten with the Viking production does pay off. The Liberator pops out, and he finally gets room to breathe. Was trying to get that third CC down as fast as possible, so already building all those very necessary gases. But Oliveira wasn't just hoping that would be the end of the game. I'm not going to do anything back at home. He has a 4th command center, he has upgrades, and he has his production set up to defeat mech. So Marauders already on the way, already involved in the army.
We talk a lot about Big Gabriel, his ability to always build SCVs, or Astrea's ability to always build pros, but I really got to give it to SpeCial. That orbital was floating all over the place. A couple of SCVs were misrallied, a couple of SCVs were forced to fight. Still hanging in there with 74. That's very impressive, because he'd be at 50 workers or so. Then we talk about how over this game is. Now he absolutely still has a shot, especially with a couple of Hellions driving into the natural of Oliveira. Unfortunately, those were not the perfectly placed shots, but this one Liberator has really been the absolute MVP, because without that lib, this game would have pretty much been over, because SpeCial would have still been a 2-base Terran. And I thought it was kind of funny to see Oliveira just stim forward, but then he had like 3 Marauders and 2 Marines, and I'm like, well, that's not the forward stim that's going to kill the Liberator.
No, it is not. This Liberator, also being allowed to really focus on the micro here. SpeCial finally gets his 3rd base up, protected sensor tower. You got to expect some form of regression very soon, but up until that point, Liberator was the only thing SpeCial really had to focus on. Now he's going to see the army incoming with the Vikings and, of course, the sensor tower, get in position. He probably already is. A lot of SimCity to work with as well. Oliveira is looking to try and jump on top of it, at least get back on that command center and force the liftoff.
Yeah, questionable fight here at first, but yeah, we'll see how it all plays out. It's pretty awkward to see these 2 armies this close to each other, as there is still a Liberator getting a lot of damage done. Oliveira thought it left or something, but it's still there. Oliveira is clearly focused on the army and the battle in the top left side, but the Liberators are really putting a number on his own economy on his side of the map.
This Liberator is seriously what's keeping SpeCial in the game, and he may be even bringing him forward. It's still a very tough situation for SpeCial, who cannot get that 4th base up, and while he needed a 3rd, he will absolutely need a 4th. Also, make sure to lift his command center. Whew, that was something fire. But that Liberator, thank goodness for that unit. Finally going to get cleaned up. And SpeCial is still struggling on this side of the map. Looks like he will get his bases back on location. Yeah, and if he can get 4 bases up, then he's probably secured a maxed out, but Oliveira is really pushing the issue.
Yep, couple of tanks once more in range of that Liberator. Oliveira's team is forward, wants to get the lip, and he does get it. Vikings are going to land on the side of SpeCial. I want to say it's a little bit questionable because they didn't really have a whole lot of backup. All of his tanks were too far back to protect these Vikings, and SpeCial's supply dropped very quickly, but Oliveira is obviously losing a lot of units as well after he tried to push forward.
Yeah, that was a very questionable Viking land. GG Oliveira keeping the pressure up. And overall, I would say taking a very convincing game, too. The only reason it wasn't as convincing as possible was honestly that Liberator. So, yeah, Oliveira just playing so darn well, and SpeCial is the one that seems a little off. That's that 3rd or the 2nd game there. It was a tough position overall, but the Viking land was very odd.
The initial move out of the tanks and then sneaking it to the left side of the map and not actually picking up the high ground, right? So avoiding the 2 Cyclones and avoiding the Reaper, I thought was absolutely brilliant, because that is what allowed Oliveira to eventually get up that ramp, siege the tanks, and then the tanks were in range of the Orbiter immediately, so SpeCial's forced to send it elsewhere. Tanks are still in range, is forced to send it back again. While if those Cyclones, instead of being on patrol in the center of NeoHumanity, would have been a little bit closer towards the ramp, then maybe SpeCial sees that army moving to his side. Exactly, this is the ramp I'm talking about. Like, technically, we can say that Oliveira is not supposed to be there with an army that big without SpeCial being aware of it, right?
Yeah, I think you can say that pretty fairly. It does look like SpeCial was predicting it because his tanks were sieging as he saw the army. So that means that they were moving to the left already, right? So that they were trying to get really on top of the 3rd. And that's really what this game boils down to in terms of the biggest problem, was that SpeCial was reacting with a decent number of units, but it was always a reaction. He didn't actually get to cover his bases, so he was forced to lift it very commonly. So it was the first engagement, he was forced to lift it, gets it back down. Even this engagement, which was like, you know, kind of, you know, whatever initially, both players could get something from it. It really impacted SpeCial because he had to once again lift his 3rd, not mine from his 3rd, lose his SCVs on his 3rd. So he never really had that concrete mining or really taking advantage of some of these chokes or the ramps, because he was always a little late to the actual party.
Oliveira definitely playing a whole lot better and not having to play on those American servers. So far, so good for the world champ, but he's not there yet. We've seen a couple of reverse sweeps already, so don't count yourself rich. But it's looking good for the man who I did think was the favorite, but I was worried. And as much as I love SpeCial, I just cannot imagine having such a big tournament without the active reigning world champ of StarCraft 2. Just for the storylines alone, Zombie Grub, he needs to be there. I know you love the storylines.
I do love the storylines, and that's absolutely a good point. Imagine he doesn't pop up, and then, you know, especially if he was still playing the same as last weekend, then everyone would just be like, oh, I guess he really was just the Katowice guy. But he has proven that he is a top-tier player. He is 1 game away from entering into Gamers 8. In the top left, it is Oliveira.
And the man who was 1 fight away against Spirit of already qualifying for this tournament now finds himself down 0-2 in the absolute last best of 5 here for these qualifiers. Can he turn things around and create the reverse sweep? Representing Sidestorm Gaming, this is SpeCial.
Yeah. I can't even really fathom just how much this makes such a difference for Oliveira. Last week or even just the previous days, it was just so, you know, it wasn't terrible, but just, yeah, not really inspiring, not really cool, and, you know, a couple of big mistakes. And now for this best of 5, he is looking like that very intimidating non-Korean player that he was even before Katowice and SpeCial. Maybe even a little surprised himself. You know, SpeCial was watching some of the previous TVTs, trying to understand what Oliveira was doing, you know, what he could also capitalize on. Completely, you know, 180. Like, oh, well, he didn't do this very well. I'm going to abuse that. Okay, well, now he's doing it extremely well, so I'm in trouble.
Yeah, I think it's always hard as well, right? Especially in TVT to look at previous games and be like, okay, because the fights can be so extreme with the auto turrets, with the matrixes, and sometimes it comes down to a little bit of RNG as well, because they're both spamming auto turrets to go down, and if you allow them, your turrets to go down first, that's obviously awesome because they will fire first, but you also make it harder for your opponent to get the turrets down, and as good as these guys are, sometimes these fights do feel a tiny bit random, because obviously you don't know where your opponent is clicking and where they are trying to drop the turrets.
Yeah, the auto turret game is so fun, and don't forget how awkward Ravens are in general too. On top of that, to make it even more awkward, because like I can't place it anymore. It's a bit silly, honestly. The Ravens portion of TVT, but it's the hand that were dealt as Terrans. We could change it up if someone identified a severe weakness in that particular portion of TVT. You can do some different build other than standard 1-1-1, but I doubt that's going to happen here. They both seem pretty intent on the 1-1-1.
Babylon, obviously a map that has a ramp leading into the natural, which normally makes it a little bit hard to get too fancy with Reaper Hellion early on. But that didn't stop Oliveira from trying on Dragon Skills, which also has a ramp leading into the natural, so he could very well go for it once more. 3 games in a row, by the way. This SpeCial, who opens up with the Widow Mine, just seems to be very fond of this opening.
Right. Usually you would see something different. They would go for, eventually the 5 Reaper, 3 Hellion to, get their opponent to consider at the very least for the rest of the games. But SpeCial is consistently opening, just basically saying, I'm defending when you get that Widow Mine. But there is a change up for both players, actually. SpeCial goes for a Liberator, because I guess the last Liberator was so amazing, right? And then Oliveira is going to go for a Medevac. I do like the Medevac better, but if the Liberator's unseen, gets sieged up, you could easily kill 6 workers while Oliveira is busy microing.
Yeah, we have the TVTs where it kind of feels like a standoff for the first 6-7 minutes, and you're like, all right, neither player can really do something, so the best thing you can do is just kind of chill at home and do nothing. With these 2 openings, I kind of feel like it sets us up for a lot of potential early on, especially if these armies miss each other. Now, it'd be a straight-up nightmare if the Medevac would have flown into the Widow Mine, but the Widow Mine is not burrowed. Will he reveal the Medevac? That's my big question. The answer is yes. I don't think that SpeCial is going to try to lure him into the Widow Mine. Oliveira sees it, and he will just sacrifice a single Marine.
Yeah, nicely done by Oliveira. Now, SpeCial knows that this is on the way and also kind of knows where it's coming in from, which is still a good thing for the defending Terran. Suppose if suddenly it's in your main base and you had no idea. So this tank being sieged up, obviously going to take care of that, no problem. In a weird way, though, this does probably mean that Oliveira can pay attention to home, because he's not finding any wiggle room with his micro on the other side of the map. But I think SpeCial even poking out to try and chase, but also distract. Fairly good pullover with the SCV. It's only 2 going down right now.
Yeah, 2 is very acceptable, but it's still a solid Liberator so far for SpeCial, because you get 2 kills, and on top of that, a little bit of lost mining time, and your unit is still alive. And at this point, Oliveira is just kind of giving up and trying to be too aggressive. Liberator is going to try its luck one more time. Cyclone, can it lock on from there? No, it cannot.
No, a bit of a misread right there. There's a lot of stuff, I guess, blocking the main from the natural. And now SpeCial, with that distraction, has gotten his army across the map unscouted. I do think Oliveira is picking up on what's about to happen, however, as he moves his army forward. But now the Liberator, key to the attack, no longer harassing units. And Oliveira does not have Vikings, just the auto turrets or an interference mage who's going to go for it. And SpeCial is going to try and defend, but with only 1 tank firing and only just now, is it going to be good enough? Weirdly enough, I think that grenade from Oliveira kind of helped SpeCial's Marines get a concave, but I just don't think SpeCial has quite enough to really be the biggest bully.
Very beautiful how Oliveira just kind of stood right on the edge of that circle and did not donate too many units. Obviously got the target fire on the tank he really wanted to kill. Overall, very well done. The rotation of the Liberator was even more beautiful, as the Lib does get 1 shot off this time around. And that means one of the tanks of Oliveira will fall. But I does still feel that despite the fact it seems like so much pressure and this seems very stressful, it kind of feels that Oliveira is handling this in a pretty calm manner.
I think it's the most important thing, right? Don't freak out about this. You will eventually take care of it because it's so tank dependent, and tanks just don't do well if you get a certain size of army, and that includes if you pull the SCVs, right? So that's why Oliveira's pulling the SCVs, but the fact that he could not take out the Liberator is the biggest problem. The Liberator continuing to get all that damage done. The SCVs can't return through it. The Vikings land without any punishments, and SpeCial apparently just keep making Liberators, dude. This is this is really tripping up Oliveira.
This is still the same Liberator that he opened up with. This is beautiful. How it sneaks into the main base, gets lost mining time, gets SCV kills, sieges up in the natural, keeps Oliveira busy, and then syncs up perfectly with the main army. And once more is the absolute MVP of this push. And Oliveira, for the first time in this series, is really in all sorts of trouble as he's down 14 SCVs. And on top of that, SpeCial is expanding on location. And that absolute MVP Liberator is now, the second Liberator is now sieging up in range of the mineral line as well. This is a beautiful TVT by Juanito.
I'm kind of glad it was the second Liberator that died. The first one deserves to live. She lived out the entire game. It probably won't. The Cyclone might be able to get a lock on and disengage prior to dying. But yeah, I mean, SpeCial is winning this game and is very close to just straight up having won it. No, Liberator. All right.
Zombie grew up, there it goes. I'm with you. Should have sent it to the bottom right side into retirement.
Yeah, I think it deserved it. Seriously, these Liberators, and you know, there is a reason why this one in particular was so clever, just before we get too hyped up on the idea of Liberators being Oliveira's weakness. That was mostly a joke. This one was really abusing the fact that most Terran players do open up with at least 2 Ravens 9 times out of 10, right? So, and the Ravens just are a little more awkward to deal with it than, say, right into Vikings. So Oliveira tries his last attempt to break out, but losing 19 SCVs and only just doing so does not bode well for the rest of the game.
Now, this is the copium, I believe, that the young kids on the internet are talking about very often. 24 SCVs against 62 on the side of SpeCial. Army supply, though, it is even. And Oliveira is like, well, I may as well try. It will never hurt to throw a Hail Mary and see where it lands. But yeah, I'm not sure where to even start with the comeback here, Zombie Group.
Medevacs and drops, I would suspect. Yeah, there we go. Once he can afford it, could hardly even afford the Medevacs, man. Oh, Oliveira. This would be one of the biggest comebacks in TVT for sure, but it is a matchup made out of comebacks, I suppose.
Yeah, I do feel like it often starts up at least being on 3 bases, and now we're still on 2, and we barely have enough SCVs to saturate 2 bases, but we'll see. It never hurts to try, and, you know, if in a way it makes him happy to just stay in this game a bit longer, battle a little, and already think strategically about the next game. Like, you can only really do yourself any favors as a player in this specific scenario. As long as it doesn't upset you, that you're obviously most likely going to lose fight after fight, it really does not hurt to try.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And I think Oliveira has proved some mental fortitude as well, so I'm not worried about him using his time to just rage and get depressed and stuff. He's just going to try and find some openings and probably have a little bit of fun with some medevac drops too, like I was pointing out. Not really using them from drops currently, just doing the push, and that's good because the Vikings were in position. But this is such a tiny amount of damage overall. SpeCial, don't overestimate your position.
Seems like a pretty bad fight from SpeCial as Oliveira now steams forward, gets the first tank. There's still 1 tank in the back that's getting a couple of big hits off. Now, good news for SpeCial is that he was very far ahead in workers, so losing 16 is not going to hurt him a whole lot. But if he does that 2 more times, then we really have a game on our hands.
Yeah, just frankly good news that he is so far ahead in statement, man. Like, because if he wasn't as far ahead as he was, his production isn't as fast compared to Oliveira's push. And then he doesn't have those backup Marines that got brought forward to protect that last tank. And then it is a really weird, like, wait, can he do this? But SpeCial was that far ahead and was with enough army that a sacrifice of such nature was, it was okay, it was livable. And now SpeCial, after making that mistake, probably won't be making it again and is now just looking to move out and destroy his opponents. He's got good upgrades, he's got great infrastructure, he still has a very good army with those Vikings to help out. And Oliveira, what do you have? Handful of Marines.
Yep, and no upgrades, of course, on these Marines. But if SpeCial takes a clumsy engagement, it could maybe still get close. But one of the tanks is not sieged up. The other one was a little bit late to the party. And it does feel that this is just a numbers game at this point. And SpeCial's got a whole lot more. GG gets called. SpeCial gets a point on the board. And at this point, he is allowed to start dreaming about that reverse sweep. Got a little scary there at the third base. That was one of the uglier fights that SpeCial could have potentially taken up that ramp. But thank the Lord that he had a second tank tucked away on the top side of that orbital.
Exactly. Yes. Then that would just been so odd to see it snowball before our eyes. Someone losing the 50 worker lead. Well, thankfully that did happen the way it did. SpeCial starts the comeback, and again, just reiterating on the build choice, it might have also been SpeCial's prediction that Oliveira was going to go for a medevac opener on this map. It is absolutely possible, and then you also would delay any of the other more impactful air units when it comes to defending a contain, basically. Right, this medevac did nothing, not only offensively but then defensively. Maybe that could have been that faster Raven or faster into some Vikings of his own. So I still think Oliveira has a chance to break this in a way that he's not so far behind if things just go a little bit better, if he waits a little longer, so on and so forth. But it was always going to be tough, I think. Really nice delivery there from SpeCial.
Yep, and I still can't believe that Liberator just perfectly rotated around the bases of Oliveira and then synced up nicely with that main army push. And that's awesome. That's the way you theorize about things, but most of the time it doesn't quite play out like that, right? That Liberator just dies and he still make you push, but for it to sync up that perfectly, it really was beautiful. This is an awesome game by SpeCial, who I believe has requested a little break before we hop into Game 4. And players obviously have all the right to do so after 3 games. If they want to take a little break, we allow it, Zombie Grow.
We do. I'm not sure if we take a break because of that, though. That's the question, Roddy.
I think that really comes down whether or not Cats and Artosis are ready to take it over on the desk in the Kalaris Dome. And if they are not ready, then I think there is no break for us.
No. In terms of all the best of 5s we've had over the last 2 weekends, a lot of them didn't go to a Game 4, first of all. And then second of all, the players aren't actually asking for the breaks. So they just wanted to go, which also happens. But yeah, so we were talking about... I had another point that you were bringing up, something about that TVT, but...
Liberator.
Can't remember.
Plant.
Oh, yeah, the Liberator. Thank you. Exactly. No, if the Cyclone positioning from the medevac was actually what Oliveira intended, then that would have killed the Liberator and really would have made it different. It's just that particular portion of the map seemed to have thrown Oliveira off. He was like, I can reach it, right? Oh, no, not at all.
Yeah, I thought it was a bit ambitious because we all know the crazy range that Cyclones can have once they are locked on. But the initial lock-on range isn't all that big. And I was like, not sure if that is going to work. And that obviously just made the defense overall a bit more clumsy. Had to pull units away again, lost a few more in a natural, and it all started adding up. I mean, you joked about it, and obviously there's no such thing as, oh, Oliveira is weak against Liberators, but we can't deny that the Liberators have been the absolute MVP so far for SpeCial, because that Game 2 Liberator is what actually kept him in the game, and that Liberator here in Game 3 single-handedly pretty much won the game.
Yeah, Game 2, it was a bit of the early push that's very tech heavy, not a whole lot of marine heavy, that allowed it to push it back. And then there's that weird phase when you face mech, you're building more Marauders. So you're just like, oh, wait, I don't have the Marines. But Game 3, it was absolutely that decision, that kind of twist on the TVT narrative that is usually 9 times out of 10, 1-1-1 into Ravens or maybe some faster Vikings, but doesn't differ from that too often. Then you sneak in a Liberator there, and especially depending on what your opponent's doing, it might cause more problems than you anticipate. Not to mention the map was also very abusive on that ramp, on that choke. So
while we are waiting for these lovely nerds to hop into Game 4, is there anything that truly stood out for you over these 2 weekends, Zombie Grub, when it came to a player that really surpassed your expectations and a player that you really thought was going to make it and hasn't made it?
Well, I think the latter is Oliveira. I think I've made that pretty obvious. I was not as it's basically just a cool factor, I'm not like a parent saying I'm disappointed Oliveira. It's just a cool factor that was missing. The Oliveira of some of the previous TVTs, where I actually really enjoyed casting him in some of the open cups, right? For his TVTs. They were just really exciting. It was missing. Glad to see that it's back. So there's that. And then someone outperforming my expectations. A Laser, I think, because I really didn't know where he was coming in from skill-wise.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I have to admit that obviously for Bunny it was tough because Bunny didn't play the first weekend, but he looked so strong from time to time in 2022. Made it to the finals of DreamHack Masters Atlanta. Kind of normally always put him in the top 8 of the Korean region. At least me, I'm a bit of a Bunny fanboy, of course. I knew, like, looking at the bracket today, that it was going to be tough. Then having a qualifying match against Hero, obviously not a walk in the park, but I would have still liked to see Bunny make it. And I gotta say, a bit heartbroken for Gumio, because he was so close already in the first weekend, and he gave us some amazing games that I kind of felt Gumi deserved it too.
Yeah. That does make me sad. Gumio got so darn close, and he looked really good too. And then kind of in the same line of thought, the fact that he did defeat Hero is what made me initially impressed. And then Hero looked a little sadder than usual, a little like, a little more lower bracket than usual. And then he just shows up today and he's like, bop, and he's onto the Gamers 8. So personally, as a Hero fan, glad to see that.
Yep. I do believe that the guys are pretty much ready to potentially hop into the last game of these 2 weekends that we had of non-stop StarCraft 2 action. Obviously, we hope all of you guys enjoyed it at home, but there is a chance we get one more. We are about to find out on the map that always delivers phenomenal TVTs. In the bottom right side of Gresvan, we are looking at the main base of the world champ of StarCraft 2. This is Oliveira.
In the top left for Storm Gaming, he is SpeCial.
We don't mind.
I think so. It's worked out for him so far. Kind of, not really. Well, that's actually, it's 1-2 working out for him, I guess. He's done it every game, so why stop now?
It created a bit of chaos in the center of the map, and obviously for some different movement of that Medevac and the Reaper and the Hanlian. So I guess the Widowmine definitely did its job in the previous game. And on Dragon Skills, it kind of did its job as well. I mean, it's hard to really hope for a much bigger hit than that. But maybe afterwards, SpeCial got a bit carried away, thinking he was just going to wipe the floor with the remaining units.
I would, even though he's done the Widowmine opening 3 times, which really does prove a pattern, right? It still would surprise me if SpeCial were to do it literally every single game, just because SpeCial to me is one of the most varied build order players. He's always got something different to show, and sometimes clever and almost too clever for its own good occasionally. So the opening into Widowmine, that could easily be changed in a TVT. That could easily be changed to a 2-Rax opener, obviously, proxied or not proxied, or just into his own 5 Reaper, 3 Hanlian type of engagement. But I guess you could also argue that the Widowmine opener just keeps him safe on 2 bases, and then there's still a world of different build orders afterwards, as evidenced by the previous games.
I'm just chuckling because it seems that you and I were both hearing the same keyboard, and I was like, who is the pro gamer that snuck into our call over here, Zombie Grove? Sounded like a whole lot of APM, and I was like, I don't know what's happening. It almost felt like all of a sudden I'm casting a live event, and we hear the tickety-tack keyboard sounds in the back. We're like, okay, that's cool, but I was like, I know it's not one of these players, but you hear it and I hear it, and that was a bit awkward. But moving on, as we are getting ready for the interesting phase of TVT.
Yeah, a little bit, a little bit of the micro going down here. And so far, very even openers. Oliveira is the one who kind of snuck in there and got out to delay the command center.
Yeah, actually, that feels really good, though, right? This early on to get an SCV kill, and then suddenly every second that you prevent that CC from being finished up, or at least continue building, you're like, yeah, let's go. What a start. Didn't even lose a unit. Like, these are the little things that really does give pro gamers a whole lot of confidence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels good, man. Feels good. The starports are now on the way. Very similar time. SpeCial did continue adding on Reapers and Hellions. No Widowmine, right? So it is a difference. Hey, ho. Yeah, he should go out and try and do something, I think. A little pokey poke.
He's kind of anticipating Oliveira to maybe already be here with a couple of units, hoping to get a great fight, but Oliveira is not doing that, not doing anything silly. He is making a Cyclone. Now, we did see a Cyclone of Oliveira die against Reaper Hellion earlier in this tournament, in that Dragon Skills game against Clem, but that's obviously something that's normally not supposed to happen. Oliveira is absolutely the one who's got some more micro potential here. He's got more HP with that Cyclone as well, and so far, I want to say the micro is quite good. Only a single SV has gone down. It's actually amazing, Zombie Grub. Oh my goodness, Oliveira, welcome back. We miss you.
Yeah, indeed. That was really nicely handled. For SpeCial, I think it was one of those weird, maybe even just momentary flicker of change of thought. Like, oh, it's probably not going to work out, but maybe I could just dive. Because I would say that a lot of the times you see that Cyclone live past the first initial, or not live, but if you see the Cyclone isn't alone after the very initial fight, the one with the grenades getting thrown down, then I would say a lot of Terrans would just back away at that point. It's only if they see an opportunity to get that Cyclone all by its lonesome, then they try to, try hard micro, right? But SpeCial tried diving for the SCVs instead and it just didn't work out.
Yeah, battling the Cyclone and the Reapers and the Hellions and the SCVs at the same time, it just felt like a little much. Now, good news for SpeCial is that often the early game skirmish is obviously not what determines the outcome of a TVT. It will give Oliveira even more confidence. I'm sure he already had some after sniping that SCV early on. He knows that this has been a very clean start so far, but it can obviously all turn around very quickly if we take a poor engagement with Tank Raven Viking.
I gotta ask you, Roddy, what do you think about SpeCial's third command center positioning? Because I hate it.
Why do you hate it?
It doesn't really seem to give any favors and only downsides, right? The downside being if Oliveira were to try and even contain you a little bit, just literally like a, hey, how you doing? They would then be able to hit the command center. But it doesn't get you any closer to the third than putting it on the high ground, right? And then just transferring it over.
Maybe he was hoping that Oliveira wouldn't scan the natural, but would scan the main base, and then Oliveira would be like, oh my god, I'm getting 2 based all in, because he doesn't see the third CC. So I honestly, that's the only thing that I can really think of. Other than that, I didn't really put a whole lot of thought into it.
Yeah, no, you might be right about that. That's a decent thought, and it's not that SpeCial's the only one who does it. By the way, I'm sure there is a reason. Just too many times that has not been completed. The SCV dies, and then they can't quite save it from being bombarded, and it just makes me sad. But Oliveira didn't do any push-outs. SpeCial is in fact the one doing a push-out. A little bit of auto harassment in the main base. Gonna grab 2 SCVs, and then maybe advance forward a little bit. But Oliveira is prepared to defend his third base.
Can he break the lock on? Yes, he can. I mean, honestly, pretty decent here by SpeCial, right? You get 3 SCVs, a couple of other SCVs are very low in HP, some lost mining time in the main base as well. And your Raven, I want to say, is going to get out, as long as he can outfly that slow Marine, and so far it can. I think Oliveira is now sending over the Cyclone, right? There is something moving in the center of the map. Can we take a look at that observer quickly? That Cyclone was hunting for it, but the Cyclone didn't manage to get the lock on, so the Raven actually managed to escape.
Can we see the units tab? Because something's really wrong here for SpeCial. Okay, so he has additional tank, additional Raven. Okay, so Stem might have been later, but I think he just... Did he just forget it? I feel like you want to start that before your 2 reactors. So he had plenty of gas and plenty of minerals to start Stem much faster than he did.
I'm not sure. Maybe over microing his Raven.
Honestly, yeah, that's actually a big concern because sometimes TVTs you're 30, 45 seconds behind, I guess even a full minute behind, but that was like the entirety of Stim almost behind. And that's also going to affect your combat shields, which is oftentimes the bigger deal, whether you can survive that tank shot after stimming. So I am a little concerned by that, but sometimes this ends up having no matter in the TVT anyways. They don't even fight each other, sometimes in TVT after the
Wow, that's a big one by Oliveira. Finally gets what he's been looking for, and that makes it 2 Raven against 2 Raven, because that other Raven was regenerating quite a bit of energy. Will Oliveira go for it rather quickly? He's going to try to maybe one-shot something. Viking advantage, I feel like it's on the side of Oliveira there, as he was just able to get a few more shots up, where maybe the positioning was just better. But yeah, not a whole lot that SpeCial can accomplish here, especially not knowing that Stim is going to be so much later.
Yeah, that would have been a disaster for SpeCial if he stuck around, because what Oliveira was doing was not only potentially sniping air units, especially those Ravens, but he was also forcing them away. Every time they pull back, they can't return as fast to throw down their own auto turrets. So Oliveira is almost guaranteeing him the faster auto turrets and thus also blocking SpeCial. So yeah, that's I think that's actually happened in this series. That's the dynamic that was going down. Oliveira was the one who took advantage of it. So good thing that SpeCial just said, yeah, fair enough. All right, let me just back away. And now we see basically continued errors on the side of SpeCial. His +1 armor, once again, very, very late. Does start his combat shields fairly well timed, actually, but it's the armor now that's concerning.
Yeah, as painful as all of that is, and obviously it does start adding up and it becomes a bigger and bigger problem, like all of that can still be completely nullified if you can just get the slightly better fight. If you're the one who sieges up the tanks quicker, you drop the matrices when it matters the most, you get your auto turrets down, if that's going to make the difference. Like, there is still a whole lot to be hopeful of, especially because despite everything, SpeCial does have 2 more tanks.
Yes, that's a very good thing to have. Absolutely. And I think you're right, especially if we do reach that kind of fourth base situation. As soon as there's almost like an agreement, everyone just parts ways, goes back to their bases, their 3 bases, and they're both getting a fourth. We do see some TVTs, a decent amount of them really, just say, okay, fair enough. And then everyone goes to 4th bases and 5th bases and triple starport. And there's not as much action as you would anticipate to take advantage of such things as faster combat shields or faster upgrades. But if someone does take advantage, in this case Oliveira, SpeCial will have to be very, very careful with how he takes engagements.
And there was one more thing to keep in mind. A lot of the little errors that you mentioned are errors that we can see, but obviously Oliveira is not aware of that. So it's not like he can necessarily capitalize on that. He is going to stim forward, drops a couple of matrixes, and the tanks, they just stood there, Zombie Grub. Why did the tanks not run back?
I think it probably was a misclick. I don't know. I honestly don't know. SpeCial taking a very odd fight. It was clear that Oliveira was diving after him, and he'd even tried to siege those tanks. He thought, initially I thought he was just getting his ducks in a row, right? The Marines in front, tanks behind. But even then, he didn't siege up his tanks, and I can only contribute that to panic and maybe a misclick as well. Oliveira just now taking complete dominance over the map, given the green light as well to continue being aggressive, so he will perhaps accidentally take advantage of his 2-2 timing.
I mean, that tank lead that we mentioned a few times is obviously completely gone. Can we take a look at how many tanks SpeCial actually lost in this game? Because that must mean 7, 8 or something, right? 7 tanks have gone down there. And in return, not a single tank went down on the side of Oliveira. Obviously, Marines are very expendable, and he still has a Marine lead. It's 41 Marines on the side of our world champ against the 32 SpeCial. SpeCial needs a similar fight, but Oliveira is not going to give it to him.
No, you could see he was like, oh, those tanks look a little lonely, but then there's so many tanks. He did not go for the fight. Oliveira at this point in time seeing an opportunity to win this game, and I think he's 100% right about that, or at least continue his lead, continuing to advance the tanks. No, actually, he was going to back away. He might actually be giving SpeCial a little bit too much credit, being like, where's the rest of your army, man? What's going on?
It's a little bit of PTSD from that move out against Gabe, right on that spot. This map, same spawning locations, he's like, I've done that before, I've been here before, let's not do that again. Let's play this one out a little bit safer. Can also wait for the 2-2 upgrades to kick in. As you can see on the right side of our screen, 7 seconds away from having a 2 upgrade lead by having 51 Marines on the battlefield. That's obviously fantastic. Gets his tanks in range of the new Fort CC of SpeCial too, so SpeCial is once more knocked back to being a 3-base Terran.
Yeah, and he doesn't really have enough tanks to try and initiate a base trade. They're barely enough to try and hold on to this ramp as Oliveira pushes through with the upgrade lead. A good split at the end as well, and Oliveira really dominating the end of that game. GG, 3-1 in his favor. And boy, was I wrong coming into this series. Totally gonna admit that, but it was because I was still expecting Oliveira from yesterday or Friday or last weekend. But given the right server, given the right time slot, Oliveira looking as good as always. And going into an offline tournament, I'm really excited for his performance now.
Yeah, he looked great. He looked solid. He looked decisive, and I am happy. Even though I love SpeCial, and it would have been awesome to see him duke it out with 15 other of the very best StarCraft 2 players on this planet. I feel like the world champ needs to be at a tournament like this, so it may have taken him a very long time. I think he has played more games in these 2 weekends than anybody else out there, but in the end, it will be Oliveira who secures that final ticket, and that does make me happy because, looking back at Katowice, the boy deserves it, and we all want to see him.
Yeah, I can be once again very excited to witness Oliveira's speed and agility and excellent micro when we get to Gamers 8 later in this year. But for now, let's send it to the desk to close out the show.
Thank you, guys. That's right. Oliveira, the world champion, leaving us on the edge of our seat until the very last second, manages to be the last player qualifying for Gamers 8. Katsanartos is joining me here. He went through 4 qualification best-of-5s, Dan, to get here, and finally has qualified to Gamers 8.
Yeah, and in fact, the TVT matchup itself giving him a little bit of a problem on that way.
Yeah.
But it felt like he did play a lot better, didn't it? It felt like his engagements were better, like he was more on top of his defense. Everything looked better here. And so you do have to ask what Zombie Grub was talking about. Like, does this have to do with time zone? Does it have to do with the latency? Some players are more affected by that than others. So I'm not exactly sure why it happened, but that looked much more in line with what I expect from the world champ.
Yeah, absolutely. It completely looked like a different player compared to some of the other series that we've seen from him throughout this tournament as a whole. But let's take a look at those highlights brought to you by Aramco here. And Katz, do you echo those sentiments? Do you also feel like it looked like a different Oliveira?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the server has a lot to do with it, right? Like this time around, he gets to play against SpeCial, who is on Korea as well. So no latency for either player, and Oliveira really shined. I mean, SpeCial had his moments. That Liberator in Game 2 was beautiful, and it was a really weird Liberator too, because it never moved for like the longest time ever. It just stayed where it first sieged, and it got so much value out of that. But Oliveira, look at this. I mean, just beautiful positioning here, flanking, knowing that SpeCial didn't take that watchtower on the left-hand side, didn't have spotting Marines, and does a wonderful job of just exploiting him time and time again and outmaneuvering him. So it's good. I'm just happy that we get to see the world champion at play in such an important tournament.
Yeah, definitely. I'm watching these games play out. As Dan, you said, the aggression looked better, the defense looked better, even just slight micro here and there all looked better from Oliveira in the series compared to the previous ones.
Yeah, but also SpeCial didn't look quite as good as he's looked the rest of the time.
Sure.
To be honest, like, yeah, the dive in with like the 2 Hellion 3 Reaper was very surprising at Oliveira's natural. He was caught off guard several times. Like Katz just mentioned, not having vision on the side of the map. That game where he went mech, it's like he has plenty of units, but they're just not in the right spot. This last engage that we're watching right now, what a weird engage. Like, his tanks are running, and then they never siege, and he never gets his Marines to block, and it's like, well, that's the worst you're going to take an engagement. So not only did Oliveira play very well, it really felt like this was the worst series from, the last couple weeks from SpeCial.
Yeah, it feels like you take neither of the in inverted commas right choices right there, because if you take the fight, then at least you're kind of trading out against him, and if you retreat earlier, then you're not losing any units. But he was caught completely in the middle of that cast, losing all of those tanks. Really the nail in the coffin there for SpeCial.
Yeah, I'm with Zombie Grab and Roddy in that it was probably a misclick not to siege the tanks, right? So, like, by the time you get your army pounced on, if you siege the tanks, you're just missing out on the DPS that they would fire otherwise. So he probably thought they were sieged or something like that, right? Because otherwise, yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. So it's a little bit sad for SpeCial to lose in that manner. But again, I'm just happy for Oliveira. And James, don't forget that this is our last time in the Calaris Dome. Are you sad?
Oh, yeah, you're right. I like these green... Sorry, I mean, not green walls. I mean this dome here. As it's been
Open it. Can you open the floor?
Can I? No, I can't open the floor. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can.
I can only do the... Oh, yes, okay.
There you go.
There you go. Sorry. I completely forgot just for a moment there.
Are you floating in the sky, James? What is going on here exactly in your dome?
It's actually... it's glass panes, and underneath it is like an opening thing, if you know what I mean, right? Just down there.
During rehearsal, I've seen you taunting the skies there, like going to the edge and stuff. I'm like, don't do it, James.
You told me not to jump last time around.
Seriously, very scary. Yeah, I'm scared of heights.
All right, let's take a look then, as we have our bracket now fully completed here for the world bracket as well. We have our 2 players down towards the bottom, of course, getting themselves the qualification on through in Oliveira, as well as Laser being able to make it through. But here are the 8 players from this weekend, Dan, and to be honest, Gamers 8 is shaping up to be an amazing tournament considering the list of players we've got.
Yeah, this is about as good as you can really do, honestly. Like, it feels like every Protoss that should have made it did make it, which was the thing we were a little bit worried about going into this weekend. Obviously, you have like all these top Terran players, all these top Zerg players.
Yeah.
It's like an all-star event.
Yeah, definitely. So that is the 8 players making it through from this weekend. Of course, though, we did have our first weekend here where the true elite were able to make it through first go here, Cats. And yeah, it's going to be great.
It's even more coherent than the other picture, right? You put these 8 against the other picture, they will destroy them. I mean, look at them. They are so powerful.
I'm glad you lent into it, yes. But absolutely, what a list of players we've got going on here. I think realistically, Dan, when you look at it overall, I mean, we made light of, maybe not Spirit might not be able to win things out, but honestly, any name from the list that can actually win this going into Gamers 8.
Yeah, it's actually just like a perfect list of players. When like the least expected to wins might be the current world champion in Spirit, have yourself a good tournament there.
Yeah,
That's when we should use the title of world championship now, not to raise the ceiling but the floor, you know.
Oh yes.
There you go.
All right, well, guys, final thoughts before we head on off. Cats, it's been a great 2 weeks of games, and now we know all of our players moving on.
Yeah, it's been really amazing, and yeah, just thank you to you, Kalaris, to Dan, to everyone else, to production, to the wonderful audience. It's been really fun, and yeah, we've had a lot of fun here, and also talking on Discord in between the series and as the games begin. So it's been wonderful.
It's definitely been fun. It hasn't felt really like a qualifier to me almost, Dan, considering the level of brackets we've got, the level of games that we've had. Some of them have been a bit crazy, to say the least here, especially with some of the upsets that we had going on. But overall, it's been a great tournament, Dan.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of fun as well. I tell you, I haven't done one of these online ones before with you guys, but very laid back, like just chilling in my chair and just enjoying some StarCraft, man. It's awesome. But the level of play here has been amazing. Like the fact that this is a qualifier, it feels like this could have been part of a main event, you know?
Yeah. And it's all gearing up for Gamers 8 here. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me here. Thank you to all the casters, all the production, everybody that's been tuning in around the world as well. That does it for Gamers Without Borders for StarCraft 2. We will be back, well, not only with DreamHack qualifiers that are coming up, regional qualifiers on the way, but also don't forget Gamers 8 of $400,000 on the line for these 16 players that have been able to qualify. My name is Kyle Loris. I will see you then. Bye-bye for now.